Hey guys, welcome back. All right, we're gonna look at the SAQ part 2. So what we're gonna do next is I'm actually gonna give you a SAQ to look at. I'm also going to provide you with some answers that people have given in the past. And I want you guys to actually read over these answers, and I want you to read over the answers and actually determine how many points you think that person got on their SAQ. So one thing I want you to remember as you're grading, and so I want you to actually write down a grade. Remember, as you're grading, either they get it right or they don't, right? And so each question has 3 parts, A, B, C. So they're either gonna get a 0, a 1, a 2, or a 3. We're gonna look at a few different examples here. So I want you guys to, you may need to pause a lot and kind of think about it and read through it. But first, let's look at the actual SAQ. So use the passage below to answer all parts of the question that follows. Inner and Central Asia have long been seen as a zone of contact and transmission. Transmission being the key word here. A lengthy conveyor belt on which commercial and cultural wares traveled between the major civilizations of Eurasia. What are we really talking about here? Right? The Silk Road. The nomads had an essential but largely unacknowledged role in this cultural traffic. While nomadic empires, who comes to mind when you think of nomadic empires in Asia? Right, we think of the Mongols, right? It's the first thing that comes to mind. While nomadic empires had as their primary objective the control and exploitation of sedentary subjects, their secondary effect was the creation of numerous opportunities for cross-cultural contact, comparison, and exchange. Indeed, although nomads are normally included in the analysis of the political context of trans-Eurasian exchange, they're typically left out of the cultural equation. Here, the great sedentary civilizations are placed at center stage, particularly when scientific and cultural transfers are under consideration. So when we look at history, like a lot of times we think of all the major empires, right? We think of the Chinese dynasties, we think of the Roman Empire. We don't really think of the nomadic people and what their impact was on culture. But as we have seen, pastoral nomads were the chief initiators, promoters, and agents of this exchange between East and West in the 13th and 14th centuries. All right, so the question, identify one specific historical example of a cultural exchange between nomads and non-nomads that occurred in the period before 1450. And this is a key, right? You want to make sure you note that date, what happened before that time. For the period 1450 to 1750, identify one development that changed the role that Central Asian nomads played in the cross-regional exchanges as described in the passage. Again, we have a change of date, right? So really, we have the age of exploration during this time right here. So you want to keep that in mind, right? Like, keep having those dates figured out, like what were big events that were going on during this time. Pre-1450, we know the Mongols were the ruling empire, right? Until the mid-1300s. Explain one cross-cultural exchange that would challenge the assertion in the last sentence of the passage concerning the nomad's role in cross-regional exchange before 1450. All right, so here's our first example, and I want you to take a second to pause, but let's go over this real quick. I want you to read over this. I'm not going to take time to read it. I want you to pause. I'll tell you when. To just pause through and actually give them a grade, all right? So go ahead and pause now. Okay, so you've given them a grade, you've given them a score. What score do you think they got? How did they do? Let's look. They scored a 1. A 1. All right, so for example A, one example of trade cultural exchange between nomads and non-nomads was Mongols introducing the saddle to Europe. So here we do have, they answered, it spread through invasion, conquest along the Silk Road. They did cite, right? They're referring specifically to the Silk Road. Europeans adopted it because it allowed for an easier way to ride animals. They did elaborate. So they have their ace right there. They did not earn the point because Mongols did not introduce the saddle to Europe. So this is an important thing to remember. We haven't discussed this yet. But if you're factually wrong, like if you say something incorrect, even if you have the perfect format, you still get the answer wrong. So you have to actually know the information. You have to say correct things. All right, so B, during this period, the Mongols reopened many old trade routes in the Silk Road, thus facilitating trade and cross-regional exchanges. Because they were nomadic, they were able to link between Europe and Asia and reignite the trade routes. This response did not earn the point because the expansion of the Mongol Empire and its effect on the Silk Road trade are out of the specified time period. And like as I just said at that last slide, right? We gotta remember, you gotta know what's happening when, right? And so they didn't get the point because the Mongols were done by 1450. The Byzantine Empire was still trading, so it was still trading with Africa and India during this time, despite all of them being non-nomadic empires. They had their own trade routes and did not rely on nomadic tribes to help with cross-cultural exchange. So they did get a point for that. The response earned the point for discussing Byzantine trade with Africa and India before 1450. All right, so I'm gonna give you guys now another example. Here's another person's answer, and I want you to figure out what score did they get, all right? Remember, it's out of 3, either they got it right or they got it wrong. All right, so go ahead and in a second, I want you to go ahead and pause it, read through the answers, and then write down or put into the Edpuzzle what answer or how many points you think they got. All right, pause it now. All right, so how do you think they did? Bum, bum, bum. This was a 3-point answer. That's right. So let's look at this. The Mongols allowed for the cultural exchange of gunpowder. Gunpowder was used in non-nomadic Tang and Song dynasties. However, when the nomadic Mongols arose and began to conquer various expansive lands such as Central Asia and Eastern Europe, the spread of gunpowder to places like the Abbasid Caliphate, which was non-nomadic. All right, we have A. They answered the question. The Mongols allowed for the cultural exchange of gunpowder. B. Gunpowder was used in non-nomadic Tang and Song dynasties, very specific. However, when the nomadic Mongols arose and began, so there was your expanse or elaboration. Right here, number 3, they elaborated on it. So the response earned the point for mentioning that the Mongols facilitated the spread of gunpowder. So we have the right time frame, we got the right people group, so they got that point there. B. The response earned the point for identifying the fact that the expansion of maritime trade in the Indian Ocean basin reduced the importance of Central Asian nomads in cross-regional exchanges because nomads did not have direct access to maritime networks. This is a key one, right? And again, we're talking about the age of exploration. Like that was the hint I gave. You have this age of exploration coming in. And so that's basically what he's talking about, right? Oh, right here, age of exploration, changed the role of Central Asian nomads, sea-based trade especially. All right, and then C, the response earned the point for its discussion on how non-nomadic Arab merchants spread Arabic numerals. Again, they did a good job of touching outside in getting each 3 part of their question. ACE is in there. All right, now let's look at one more example. We're going to look at one last example here. And I want you to answer how you think they did. All right. So here's one more. I want you in just a second to pause your screen and read through the example and write down how you think they did. All right. So just do that. All right. You should have written your answer down. Hit play again. And let's see how they did. So they scored a 2. The response earned the point by identifying the Mongols as a nomadic group and the spread of gunpowder as the cultural exchange. So let's look at this. Specific historical example of cultural exchange between nomads and non-nomads before 1450 was the conquering of many sedentary states by the Mongols, a nomadic group who spread trade and technology like gunpowder. So the fact they were able to draw that out specifically right there. To Asia and the Middle East. Now I do want to point out, right, they did not actually have 3 sentences for their answer here. Right? They were able to do it actually in one long sentence. But this 3-sentence model of acing it is your safest and best way to ensure that you don't accidentally leave something out. All right, so B, this one the response did not earn the point. The response accurately states that the discovery of silver in South America reinvigorated global trade, but the response inaccurately states that the discovery of silver benefited the nomads. Right, how did this discovery actually benefit the pastoral nomadic culture? not really. Now, it did benefit the age of exploration, but that would be the Spanish cultures, right? The Portuguese, those that were already sedentary. And then C, the response earned the point for the discussion of how pre-1450 Indian Ocean trade resulted in exchanges of navigational technology and how nomads did not participate in that trade. And so we can see how they used that to overcome the challenge. All right, so I hope this was helpful for you guys. I hope you all have a good idea of like, okay, this is what is being looked for in an SAQ. When we meet back up, we're going to take some time to do some practice SAQs in class. So, all right. And if you do need more practice, remember to go on to AP Classroom and do your PPCs, your personal progress checks. And there's also other SAQs out there. You can go to Khan Academy and whatnot. So I gladly provide you links and such for more practice if you need it.